Hello everyone. I hope everybody is doing good. Today is the episode 13 of Mind Talkies and we will be having with us Mr. Nitin Shah. Just waiting for him to come live. So I hope that the strategies that we had suggested you in the previous episodes are proving to be beneficial for all of you, and I hope that you're able to incorporate them. Please do share your feedbacks. So I've sent you the request. Please see. So I think there's some problem. Let's retry.
Hi.
I think earlier there was some problem with the connection, but now I think we are good to go.
Perfect. Please say.
So can you hear me? Can you see me?
I can hear you. I can see you. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you. Perfect. I think we are still 1 minute. I feel that we still have 1 minute. So I think let's begin because I am completely excited. So hello everyone, welcome to the episode 13 of Mind Talkies, and today we have with us Nitin Shah, director and founder of ICHARS, which is the Institute of Clinical Hypnosis and Related Sciences. Sir is an author, educator, trainer, therapist, a life coach, and an inspirational and a motivational speaker, and he has done such humongous amount of work in the field of psychology that is so appreciable by all, and we welcome you, sir, and we cannot really thank you enough for agreeing to come on board with us and being a part of our Mind Talkies series. So we welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
But sir, I think I would definitely want you to reintroduce yourself because my introduction is definitely incomplete, and you are an inspiration to a lot of young psychologists, including me. So I think I would definitely ask you to reintroduce yourself, and I believe that people would definitely want to hear more about you from you.
Okay. So, actually, can you? Am I there?
Yes.
Yes. Perfect. So, you've actually given a good introduction about me. I don't know what else do I add to that, but just to probably if I have to add a couple of other things. Apart from the fact that I am the director of iCare Support Foundation and iCare's CEO, one of the key things that I'm focused on is helping mental health practitioners create a emotionally and financially fulfilling career. And the reason why I'm saying this is because everyone is today talking about mental health, which is brilliant.
Right.
But mental health as a sector can only grow if we can help mental health practitioners grow. And sadly, there are not enough people talking about mental health practitioners.
Right.
So that's probably one of the things that we are focusing on. And as an extension of that, obviously, the other things that we have respect to helping people manage their thoughts and helping people manage their emotions is something which we do as a part of our day-to-day activities and day-to-day line of work, right? So I think that's what I would like to add. Probably one more little thing, because I'm talking about mental health and mental health practitioners, is the mental health practitioners challenge that we have initiated, which I would really request all of you to check out. It's basically about us asking different people to come forward and make a pledge that they would surely consult a mental health practitioner as and when they feel they have been feeling overwhelmed, confused for more than a couple of days. The idea is not to wait till it's too late, not to wait till you reach a disorder, but you actually start looking at mental health as something that you are also taking precautions towards.
Right, right. So I think you very correctly said that a lot of time we actually do neglect and wait for a disorder to really happen to us, and then we start seeking for help. So I think let's move towards the topic of discussion, which is again about thoughts and emotion, as we had intended to speak about. My very first question to you is, where do these thoughts really come from? So I believe that they are again a part and parcel of our present and past experiences, the sort of belief system that we hold, and of course our decision making ability that makes us decide the sort of environment that is around us, and the way we I would say the way we adapt to the environment as well. Right. So how would you, probably throw some light and shed some light on how does one?
So how do we really? Can you hear me?
Yes, I think your voice is somewhere. It's echoing a bit.
Is it better now?
It is, but it is okay. Actually, good to go. Maybe somebody can really tell us if it is okay, because somewhere I feel that I can only hear you very faintly. So.
Okay, so just let me know if at any point you're not able to hear me clearly.
It is better now.
It's better now? Perfect, really. So, where do these thoughts come from? So, anything that happens to us, basically, there are four sources to it, right? One is it's either something that I'm thinking because of whatever has happened in my life or whatever I'm planning for the future.
Right.
So, it's something related to what I want. The second thing could be about other people. That there are people around me who are behaving in a particular way, reacting in a particular way. When I see them, when I hear them, obviously that influences the way I think.
Right.
The third one would be where it's related to situations, where I just observe or notice a particular event or a particular situation, and that triggers a thought in me or an emotion in me. Right? And eventually the fourth one would be about things just related to future, things that have not happened. So I can't really think it's about me, it's about others, or it's about situations, but I'm just thinking about something that may or may not happen in future. So the source of thoughts would probably be one of these four things. Obviously we are thinking them in our head. So they are taking place in our head, but these will be the sources where these thoughts will get triggered from.
Okay. So, taking this thought forward, I also want to ask you that since we are aware that the nature of thoughts can really differ from positive to negative, right? And some of us frequently say that I have a very positive way of thinking, and then other people, there are other set of people who say that I think very negative. Then we also come across people who take good care of themselves and they are very kind to themselves. And then there's another set of people who are too self-critical, right? So how does one really manage thoughts? Because, if you talk about human mind, 60,000 thoughts cross our head on a day-to-day basis. And these thoughts are both positive and negative. So how does one really manage those thoughts?
So the idea that thoughts are positive and negative, that's a label that we are giving to those thoughts from the point of view of assessing whether we are thinking something in the lines of what may work or what may not work. But in reality, those labels themselves are a bit tricky, because when we say negative thinking, I have someone running after me with a knife in his hand. And if I have a thought in my head that this person may kill me, I'm not really sure if I want to call it a negative thought. So the way I would look at thoughts is more in terms of whether thoughts are effective or not effective. There are places where negative thoughts can be very effective. There are places where positive thoughts can be very effective. And you could have the reverse situation also. There could be places where positive thoughts can be very ineffective. You have people who would say that I am going to gamble. And they are gambling because of the positive thought that they are going to win a lot of money. But that gamble may not necessarily be translated into a positive result, right? So one is to really recognize that only because we are talking about negative and positive, not every positive thought is good, not every negative thought is bad. They are both required, provided they are in a context. Right? Now, once we understand that, then working with thoughts is a lot more easier. See, the pressure to always think positive is a very, very powerful pressure. It's a pressure that actually can make us very negative. Instead, when we recognize that thoughts can be positive and negative, and I just have to see whether it's in context, I can then start managing my thoughts more effectively. So, tomorrow, if I get up in the morning and I have to go to a meeting and I have a thought, I may not be able to do it well because I'm not prepared. Okay. Now, if I'm not prepared, that actually tells me, all right, between now and I go for my meeting, if I have time, can I prepare better? That thought is actually giving me a sense of direction of what I need to do next.
Okay. Okay.
So the moment I recognize this, I can now start making use of my thoughts more efficiently. And the thoughts which are not working for me. So for example, if I were to get up in the morning and I were to say that I will blank out in front of my client, or I will blank out in my exam. Right? And I've prepared well. Now I can kind of have a conversation with myself, but I have prepared well. Why should I blank out? So again, the idea is not in terms of positive and negative thoughts. The idea is whether the thought is effective or ineffective. If it's effective, brilliant. We don't really need to change that. We don't change a winning combination, right?
True.
But if it's ineffective, then we need to carry on a conversation with ourselves till that conversation reaches a place which is more effective.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yes, of course. So I think that's a very, a very beautiful way of looking at thoughts rather than classifying them as positive and negative. It's best to classify them as effective and I would say, can I safely say situation appropriate? And of course,
Right. So situation appropriate or situation inappropriate. So it's basically the idea is whether it's in context or not. And the reason and so all right. So let me just clarify this. How do we define whether a thought is effective or ineffective? Because otherwise it becomes the similar label like positive and negative. So if you have a outcome that you want to achieve, and if your thought is helping you move towards that outcome,
okay.
then it's an effective thought. If you have an outcome and your thought is stopping you from achieving that outcome, then it's an ineffective thought.
Okay.
Right? So the effectiveness or ineffectiveness is measured by whether it is enabling me to achieve what I want to achieve or do what I want to do, or it is not.
Okay. So here actually I would definitely want to ask a question. So let's say if that ineffective thought is obstructing of what is probably expected of me to achieve, or probably what is something that I intend to achieve, then how does one really work with that?
All right. So then comes the next step of being able to manage your thoughts. Now there are multiple ways of managing your thoughts. I'm probably going to cover a few of them in this session today. Right? So one of the techniques that we extensively talk about in thought management is called when-then statement. Now, a when-then statement is basically an extension of what I said earlier. Remember I said that thoughts can be triggered by 4 different situations? Right? So 4 different sources per se. Now, you could identify the source, you can identify the thought, and you can actually create a change in the thought. Let me demonstrate this for you so that it becomes easier. Let's say someone is afraid of public speaking. Right? Now, what makes them afraid? Can you think and tell me? Why is it that one person looks at a stage and feels anxious and another person looks at the stage and feels very excited?
So maybe it could be on the basis of the past experience one had, and that wouldn't have been that great. Maybe that is why he's shying off.
So because of the past experience, what's happening today? When they look at the stage, they either have a thought, let's say because of a past experience, that people will laugh at me. Right? Or they have a thought that people will appreciate the work that I've done.
Right.
So while there can be a past experience, and that's brilliant, but that past experience is affecting me today by the thoughts that I'm having today.
So what I wish to know here is, so what you're saying is the anticipation of the consequences without really facing the consequences is the real challenge.
Either the anticipation or any other thought that I have, the thought may not necessarily be related to only anticipation of consequences.
Right.
The thought could be something else, but it's that thought that is actually creating the anxiety that I'm experiencing.
True.
Right? So the process is quite simple. You identify what is the trigger that triggers the thought.
Right.
So in this case, let's say stage triggers the thought. What is the thought that is making me anxious? People will laugh at me, people will throw chappals at me, people will throw tomatoes at me.
Right.
Right? Now, what is it making me feel? It's making me feel anxious. Is this thought that people will throw chappals at me and this feeling, which is anxiety, actually going to help me in delivering a speech in front of a large audience?
Right.
If it's not, which in most cases it will not, then it becomes an ineffective thought and emotion. Right? Now what I want is I want to switch this with a more effective thought and emotion. So if anxiety stops me from speaking in front of a large audience, what will be the opposite of anxiety? What will help me speak in front of a large audience?
Not being.
Can you?
It could be anything. It could be like probably not looking at the audience altogether, or maybe facing.
Correct, but that's still what I would do. What I'm looking for is what will be the final emotion that I should feel. That if I'm feeling this emotion, which is the opposite of anxiety, then probably I'll be able to speak in front of an audience. So just what will be the opposite of anxiety?
Calm. I'll be more calm.
Calm? Perfect, brilliant. Now the reason I asked you that question is because different people give different answers. So for some people it can be calmness, for some people it can be confidence, for some people it can be excitement. So for different people the answer will be different. Right? Now when you say I want to feel calm, I would ask from you what thought will help you feel calm. When you look at the stage, what should be the first thought in your head? That if I have this thought, I think I'll feel calm.
That I don't really have to care about people. It's okay if they judge me.
Okay, so when you see the stage, if your first thought is, it's okay if they judge me, I don't have to care about them. Would this actually help you experience calmness?
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, brilliant. So hold on to that because I'm going to come back to that again. And I'm giving you a couple of additional examples now. So you said calmness. For calmness, you gave one thought.
Right.
Let's take up confidence. And someone says that, I've prepared well. So when I look at the stage, my first thought should be I've prepared well and people will appreciate what I have prepared for.
Okay.
I'm kind of giving them certain information that they're not even aware of. So if they actually have this thought, the chances are they will be confident.
Yes.
Right? Someone who wants to feel excited, right? They may actually want to think that the moment I finish the presentation or I speak in front of the audience, people will give me a standing ovation. Right? Now, do you notice how the new emotion, whether it's excitement, whether it's confidence, whether it's calmness, is actually also a result of the thought that they have when they look at the stage.
Right.
So all I need to do is I need to be able to disassociate the old thought, which is people will throw chappals at me, from the vision of stage. So when I look at the stage, I should not have that thought. And instead of that, I need to replace it with any of the three thoughts that we have spoken about. Right? Now the trick is, how do I replace? Because it's easier said than done.
Right.
Right? And the answer to that is when we spoke about when then statement. So the way it works is you take when, add trigger to it. So when I see the stage, then add then and add the new thought to it. Then I realize I don't have to care for the people.
Right.
They can judge whatever they want to judge for me. While I am standing and delivering, I'll also judge them. Right? So now when I have this statement, so the statement becomes when the trigger, then the new thought.
Right.
Let's quickly do it with the confidence one also, because for a lot of people that will be a lot more easier to understand. So when I see the stage, then I realize I've prepared well and people will appreciate what I've done, what I'm going to speak.
Right.
Now, I have the framework, I have the thought process, but I need to condition it in my mind. So, what's happening right now is every time I look at the stage, I naturally have that thought that people will throw chappals at me. I don't sit and create that thought. That thought is almost conditioned.
Right.
You know, it's like your computers. When you double click on a docx file, it knows it needs to open the Word document.
Right.
You don't have to keep telling the computer that you have to open the Word document. Similarly, with our mind, the moment it looks at the stage, it automatically has this thought that people will throw chappals at me because of whatever past experiences I may have had. Now, I need to change the program. How do I change the program? Is I actually condition my mind, and that's when I rehearse. So, if I'm going to go on a stage a week later, I have a week with me. During the day, whenever I have time,
Right.
I literally narrate this to myself. When I see the stage, then I realize that I've prepared well. People will appreciate what I'm going to speak. And I repeat it so much in my head that in the middle of the night, also, if someone says, stage, my first thought is, I've prepared well, people will appreciate what I've done. Right? Now, to understand how conditioning works, when I say, if you believe in ISKCON, when I say Hare Rama, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
Hare Krishna.
When I say, जोर से बोलो,
जोर से बोलो, जय माता की.
हाँ, जय माता दी, right? Nowadays, if you've been watching ads frequently, क्या चल रहा है?
Sorry?
क्या चल रहा है?
क्या चल रहा है? I have not been watching.
So if you have been watching ads, then for most people the answer is fog chal raha
Oh
hai.
yes, fog chal raha hai.
Yes, perfect. So what's happened? You have been listening to it so frequently that your mind is literally conditioned to operate that way. The moment you hear Hare Rama, your mind automatically creates the thought Hare Krishna. Not because you believe in Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. I know of people who would not call themselves spiritual at all. But when you say Hare Rama, in their head, the first thing is Hare Krishna.
True.
Because they've heard it so frequently. Right? That's exactly what we are doing with Vendan statement. So what we are doing with Vendan statement is we are actually conditioning our mind. We are telling our mind, whenever you see the stage, this is the thought that you are supposed to have. And the funny thing about thoughts is they don't have to be real or unreal. The thoughts can literally help you create emotion. The moment I feel confident in front of a stage, the chances are I'll do what I have to do, which is speak in front of them. Right? And once I've spoken, whether people really appreciate it or not is a retrospect, but it's a later on thing. I have already done what I had to do.
Right. And if it does appear well, then probably that particular thing will further get reinforced, isn't it?
Correct. Because no matter what I do now, if my past experience was really bad, and if I can speak in front of an audience with confidence, obviously provided that I've prepared, right? It will be better than what it was the last time.
True.
Right? So it will only improve my situation. It really isn't going to create a bigger problem for me. Obviously, the caveat is that I have prepared. Right? Well, that's a separate thing that I know of a lot of people who may know nothing about the subject, but because of their confidence, they pull it through. Though I would not recommend that.
Right. So actually, that brings me. So what I understood is that conditioning does really help, and this when then statement can really probably work internally on the conditioning part. But yet there are a lot of people who would say that it is easier for me to, let's say, prepare and be pre-prepared for something for like a week, and then it is very difficult for them to restore or retain it for a longer period of time. So is conditioning the only way one can really restore or let's say retain the effectiveness of a thought, like you're saying?
No. So the thing is, conditioning is a process to keep you feel, to make you feel what you need to feel.
Right.
Recalling is a function of that. So let's take the example of studies, because that's where recall generally becomes most important. There are children who will tell you, there are students who will tell you that we would prepare for the entire year, but the moment we look at the paper, we blank out. And then we move out of the examination hall and we remember everything that we blanked out in the examination.
Right.
right? So what happened? Obviously, recalling is not a problem. They were able to recall it after the paper got over. There was something else that stopped them from recalling exactly when they needed to recall it, which is when they were in the paper. And that's because they became anxious at that time. That anxiety kind of created a blockage that stopped the information from flowing up. And then after the paper, when the anxiety went away, when they were calmer again, they were what they are generally, the recall became a lot more easier. So the easiest way to recall is to actually remain in the right mental state where you're not getting blocked. Now again, and that's the reason why I'm not willing to say that it's calmness or it's confidence, because for different people that state is different. For some people, calmness will help them recall that information. For some people, confidence will help them recall that information. So whatever mental state works for you, whatever emotional state works for you, just condition your mind to be able to get into that state when you are supposed to remember it. So associate a trigger with that. So in this case, I will not associate a trigger for studies. I will associate a trigger for the actual examination. That when I'm sitting in the examination,
Right.
then I realize, and I'm doing that for a long period of time, so that the moment I'm in the examination hall, my mind is naturally in that calm state. Right? Now, obviously, this is only one of the ways, and this is very useful when you have time. You at least need a week to be able to properly condition your mind.
Right.
Right?
So why I asked this question is that a lot of time people say that ek baar to ho gaya. When I had to go to the stage, I could really practice and I could really perform well. But probably let's say after taking a good amount of gap, 6 months, wo cheez dobara, it's reasonable. So I think, like you said, that people need to start associating, with that neutral stimulus that they had earlier associated themselves with. Is that correct?
Correct. It is, and the difference between just positive thinking and this is this. When you are trying to be positive, it's like I have a stage in front of me.
Right.
My mind is telling me people will laugh at me. And now I'm trying to tell myself, no, that is a stupid thought. That's a wrong thought. The right thought is that people will appreciate me. Now the problem is I'm creating an internal conflict.
Right.
One part of me is having a negative thought. Another part of me is trying to overpower it by thinking positive.
Yeah.
I am not a fan of creating an internal conflicts. Because a conflict with myself is a conflict no matter who wins or lose.
Right.
I'm having a conflict with myself, right? I would rather want to resolve the conflict altogether. And therefore, we are working in advance, where we are saying that when I look at the stage or when I look at my examination paper, my first thought should put me in the right mental state. I shouldn't have a contradictory thought that I have to fight. Right? And now, if you're able to do that, then what you've done is you've associated the new functional thought with the trigger.
Right.
It doesn't really matter whether you've spoken in front of a stage for 6 months or 1 year or not, because if that association is developed, later on when you're in front of the stage, the chances that the thought will automatically get triggered again is still very high. It's again like I have a Word application stored in my laptop. I have created an association between the Word file and the Word application. Right? Now I may not open a Word file on my laptop for the next 1 year. But after 1 year, when I double click on docx, it will still open the Word file. Right? Similarly, if I've created that association, I may not be exposed to the stage for the next 1 year. But when I do get exposed to that stage, the automatic thought which I've conditioned plays up again.
Right. So when then is one strategy? Would you probably recommend any other strategy that probably people should follow up with?
Correct. So when then is more when you have a specific trigger that you are working with, right? Which is one.
Probably examination.
In the sense, correct. So so in the sense, I know that there's an examination that I'm going to go for. I know that I'm feeling anxious and I'm on a stage. So there is a very clear indicator of what makes me anxious or what makes me uncomfortable. There are places where people would say that I just have too much of chatter going on in my mind. It's not even a question of positive or negative. It's just that there's a lot happening in my head, and I need to want to be able to cut that chatter down. Right? Now that's a place where a lot of people will talk about meditation. Though with meditation, you have to be slightly careful because there are different types of meditations.
Right.
So some meditations can be very useful when you have a chatter going on in your head. The wrong kind of meditation can completely ruin everything that's happening in your life. So you have to be careful with that. Now, what do I mean by wrong kind of meditation? When you have a lot of negative chatter happening in your mind. Any meditation that makes you analyze your thought is not a very smart process to follow because you're only focusing more and more on the negatives. Right? Then a meditation that helps you shift your focus to something external is far better. There is like walking meditation. When you're walking, you can completely feel the floor on your feet, the grass touching your skin, and you can literally experience that air touching your face. Those are all external focus of attention meditation, where you're shifting your awareness from inside your thought to something that's happening outside.
Right, right.
Right? Now, once that happens, my mind, see, the good thing about your conscious mind is it can only focus on few things at a time.
Right.
So if there's a lot of negative chatter going on in my head, and if I shift my focus on something completely outside, there is no space left for the negative chatter because my mind can only focus on those few bits of information. Right? And the moment I'm able to focus on something externally completely, that negative chatter will automatically come down.
So this negative chatter that you're referring to is the constant state of worry that a person can probably
Correct.
and it could be related.
Correct.
It doesn't really have to be specific. It could be as vague as possible. Is it?
It could be as vague as possible. It could generally be, there are people who will tell you that's become a natural state. I don't even know क्या चल रहा है. I'm not even aware of what thoughts are going on. But I know those thoughts bother me, and I know at the end of it I feel very heavy. So I know they are at least not helping me. So I need to be able to reduce the chatter down. Right? Again, for me, as I said earlier, it's not as much about negative or positive. It's about whether it's helping me or not helping me. If something is making me feel heavy, if something is stopping me from taking actions, if something is stopping me from achieving my outcomes, well, I need to change that.
Right, right. So, so can we now safely say that our thoughts are under our control, because that's the title of today's talk. So can we say that our thoughts are mostly under our control, and one can really take control and manage their own thoughts?
So in the short run, maybe no, because we need to take certain steps to be able to condition our mind in a particular way.
Right.
And learn to process information in a particular way. But in the long run, you have a lot more control over your thoughts, over your emotions than you actually think you have.
Right. By just probably implementing certain tricks and strategies that probably can really help them, and that is obviously fully given, is it?
Correct. So, for example, when there is one strategy that we spoke about, mindfulness of external things is another strategy. When I spoke about focusing on something outside, that's basically becoming mindful, right? It's a mindfulness activity that you are doing. Apart from that, you can start maintaining a gratitude journal, because you can only have gratitude for things that you have in your life. And if you have certain things in your life, you will, the moment you start appreciating what you have in your life, right, then automatically your ability to use what's happening in your head increases to a large extent. Right? So, and when I say gratitude doesn't have to be something about major dramatic things in your life. For me, I have gratitude for Zomato and Swiggy. My life has been made so much easier because of that. Right? The fact that we can do a Insta live where you are sitting at your place, I am sitting at my place. Probably there are a lot of people who are able to watch this, listen to this, benefit from this. Earlier, you had to probably pay X amount of money, invest X amount of time to attend a particular seminar. All of that can now be saved because of the space that we are in. Right? Imagine the amount of learning we can have in that space. So while I understand there are a lot of things that may not be working in our life, right, and the current scenario is a testimony of the fact that at times things can completely go topsy-turvy in a matter of moments, but at the same time there's enough that's working for us in our life.
Right.
Which again brings us back to our thoughts and emotions. So even to have gratitude, so if I have to connect it back to then I look at this news report and I can say, shit, the numbers are increasing. right? And that may make me anxious. Or I can look at the news report and I can say, I am sitting with my family, I am safe, my family is safe.
Right.
That will automatically calm you down. Now that switch from I don't know whether this will ever end to I'm with my family, I'm safe, they are safe, is the switch which will actually help you manage your emotions effectively. And that's where your thought conditioning comes into play.
Right. So I think since I see you are repeatedly saying that thoughts at some extent does influence your emotions. So probably we'll move to the second segment of and where we're going to talk about how thoughts are basically influencing us and whether or not these emotions that we feel are under our control as well or not. So I have three questions to ask you when we're talking about emotions. First is that definitely there's a lot of ambiguity I feel, and of course there's a thin line that mood, feelings, and emotion share. So probably I would request you to help us understand the difference between the three. The second thing is that like thoughts, can emotions also be something that we can control? And third is if yes, and how?
Okay. So your first question was mood, feeling, and emotions.
Yes. How does one
Alright.
differentiate between the three?
Okay. So generally, mood is a more sustained thing,
Okay.
right? Feelings and emotions can be more fleeting, which is one. Second, the way we classified or the way I would look at feelings and emotions is this. Feeling is a broader category. Feelings can have emotional feelings and physical feelings both.
Okay.
Emotions are emotional feelings. So as to say, so for example, I may say that I get angry.
Right.
Right? Now anger is an emotion. I'm experiencing it in my head. And I may say, while I'm feeling angry, I have this heaviness in my chest. My hand is literally shaking. Right? I can feel that sensation running in my fingers. It's almost like I want to clench my fist. Right? So feelings can be both emotional feelings and physical feelings.
Okay.
Right? Emotions are more what's happening in my head. What am I experiencing as an emotion in my head? It's basically the chemicals that are being released in my body to make me experience certain things in my head. Right? Physical feelings are more sensations. They are literally physical sensations that I'm experiencing. For example, pain. There are a lot of people who will tell you that the moment I get mentally stressed or the moment I get angry, I start experiencing pain in some part of my body.
Right.
So pain becomes physical feeling, anger becomes emotional feeling in this sense. Right? Other examples of emotional feeling will be helplessness, anger, anxiety, guilt. All of them would be emotional feelings. Physical feelings will be lightness, heaviness, tingling, tweaking. A lot of people say I experience emptiness.
Triggered by our thoughts.
Can you say that again?
They do get triggered by our thoughts, the way we are thinking.
The physical feelings?
No, not physical, but I'm just saying generally, like our feelings, do they get influenced by our thoughts?
Yes. Think of it this way. Take a simple example. Let's say I am a student
But
who's supposed to get up in
long
a
term, is it a long term thing? As we say that thoughts, when they're influencing emotion, that's more of a long term thing. Yeah, for feelings.
No, it's both long term and short term. It's both long term and short term. Let me give you an example to make it clear. Let's say I am currently in my school. I'm supposed to get up in the morning tomorrow
Right.
and go for a class which has a teacher that I hate and a subject that I don't like at all.
Right.
Right? Now, when I wake up in the morning, what is the first thought in my head? वो सर की शक्ल देखनी पड़ेगी. Right? And the moment I have that thought in my head, what is it that I feel when I'm waking up in the morning? I'll feel heavy.
Right.
I'll feel lethargic. Right? And probably emotionally I'll experience anger or frustration or helplessness.
Right.
Right? So as my environment, in this case my having to go in a class that I don't like, triggered my thought, which has influenced my feelings, both emotional and physical.
Right.
And it doesn't stop here. When I go to the class and when I sit in front of the teacher, my body language will reflect my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings, all of them.
Right.
And when my body language reflects that, my teacher is bound to pick me up in the entire class to answer a question that I don't know. Because the teacher can also see that I'm not interested in the class.
Right.
Right? And eventually the teacher then insults me in front of the entire class. So technically, my thoughts have not just influenced my emotional feelings and my physical feelings, they have influenced my behavior, they have influenced the final outcome that I'm going to achieve.
Right. Wonderful.
Now, when I achieve that outcome, the next time when I have to go for that class, I would be even more frustrated because I would remember the last time the teacher scolded me in front of the entire class.
Right.
So it influenced my short-term feelings and it influenced my long-term feelings. Right? And that's how eventually it will get converted into so that belief. So that's actually the interplay between beliefs and thoughts.
Right. Right.
Thoughts will influence my responses. My responses will influence my results. My results will influence my beliefs, and my beliefs will later on influence my thoughts again.
Right. 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 True. So how do we manage it?
So how do we manage thoughts? We have already spoken. Right? Now, how do we manage emotions? So one way of managing emotions is what I said, which is through thoughts, the when-then statement. Right? There are other processes that you can do. So, for example, if you know of, there's a process called anchoring. Now, the anchoring process is like what we did with when-then for thoughts. You do it with emotions. So, you create like small associations. So, let's say I want to create an association for calmness. So, I can think of a past experience where I have experienced calmness to the fullest. I go back into that memory and I literally imagine that memory to an extent that every cell of my body vibrates with that calmness. So I'll have to use a combination of past experience and imagination for that. Now once I'm experiencing that calmness to the fullest, I do a physical activity, let's say this. And I mentally tell myself, every time I do this, I would experience this calmness. And I repeat this process 3-4 times where I would every time I imagine that calm memory, I'll bring the finger and the thumb closer and press it tightly. Now I do this 3-4 times and then by the 5th or the 6th time, I can simply sit, close my eyes, do this and I will notice the calmness coming up again. It's literally like I'm installing a switch in my system. This is my switch to feel calm. And it's amazing because whenever I want to feel calm, all I have to do is this.
Right.
If we thought we don't have control our emotions, it can't get any simpler than this. Right? But yes, it requires you to do things in advance. I can't be in front of a stage and all of a sudden say that I want to feel calm and therefore I'll do this. I will have to first anchor that calmness and then when I want to go to the stage, then I can use that. Right? But it's again about training my mind to be able to experience certain emotions. Right? And while I'm on stage, if I have not done all of this, then I can still go back to that process of mindfulness that I spoke about. That rather than focusing on what's happening in my head in terms of my thoughts and what's happening in my body in terms of my feelings, I start focusing on everything that I can see. So for example, if I'm on a stage, I can literally look at the exit sign and I can mentally start describing the color of the exit sign, what is the shape, what is the font, so that I'm so consumed by the exit sign that I'm no longer in my head. Right? And then when I start speaking, generally with example stage and examination both, you will notice people will say when we start writing or once we start speaking, then we get in a flow because we have prepared. The problem is to actually get started properly. It's again with examination. People will tell you answer याद ही नहीं आ रहा था, but जहाँ लिखना चालू किया, वो हाथ उसके बाद my hand just knew what to write. Right? So all of these tricks and tips actually help you get started. Obviously, the assumption is you've prepared well.
Right. So, like you rightly said that, it is all about training your mind correctly. Right? So, be it about structuring your thoughts from negative to positive or how these thoughts really end up, affecting our emotions. Let's say that some people are able to manage them, but there's a huge lot of people who are finding it really difficult to manage. Some of them are actually facing issues, but they're not ready to talk about. Something that we often talk about, right? And then, of course, in no time, these thoughts and emotions can get pathological, and then it can turn turn into disorders, right? So if we were to only tell people about the different sort of help that is available, that one can really attain, then what are the different kinds of help that is available in India?
Okay. So let me put it this way, that if you are in a state where you're feeling a bit confused, a bit overwhelmed, because you're not able to make a particular decision, you're not able to identify your outcome. And that happens with a lot of people where they will say that, I don't know what to do with my life.
Right, right.
If you're in that state, then probably visiting a coach is a good idea.
Okay.
That will be the first line of help. Because what the coach will do is will ask you a series of questions that will help you get more clarity, which will help you make decisions.
Okay.
Right? And once you're able to have that clarity, generally that's all that a lot of people are looking for to begin with.
Okay.
If you have not visited a coach when you were supposed to, and it's reached a place where you're now starting to feel very overwhelmed,
Okay.
a bit confused to an extent where you feel it's influencing your day-to-day activities. You are not able to do certain things that you should actually be doing.
Right.
Right? Then probably it's a good time for you to visit a counselor or a psychologist. Okay, so what I'm talking about is a counseling psychologist now. What the counseling psychologist does is they have the skills to not just help you with clarity, they also have the ability to help you work with your emotions. So if you're already in that state where you're experiencing intense emotions, which are making you a bit dysfunctional, then visiting a counseling psychologist is a good idea. That's the second line of help that you will go to.
Okay.
Right? If you feel it's reached a state where now you are worried that you have a particular disorder, and you are not sure, how at times we self-diagnose ourselves by actually going through Google and we start noticing, oh, ye sare symptoms hamme, therefore I have this disorder. So if you are beginning to worry that you have a disorder, then probably visit a clinical psychologist who can do certain tests and help you really understand whether you have a disorder or not.
Okay. Okay.
Right? Now, if you have a disorder, then the next line of help is visit a psychiatrist because they will be able to give you the medicine. The medicine will only help you stabilize. You will still have to go back to your psychologist so that you can work with the underlying issues related to that. Right? And in that case, you will work in combination with a psychiatrist, psychologist, where the psychiatrist gives you the medicine to stabilize your mental states. And you're working with a psychologist to ensure that you start sustainably improving in the way your mind is working and in the way you're thinking and the way you're experiencing emotions, so that over a period of time, the psychiatrist can start reducing the dosage of medicine that's been given to you. Right? So those are the level of help that I would suggest.
Right. So can we now safely say that one should really start seeking for help, keeping in mind the intensity and the duration of the problem? Can we say that?
I would say one should seek help.
Signs and symptoms that are sort of occurring, that one them should be really vigilant of.
Correct. So I would actually say seek help whenever you feel you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling confused for more than 2 days. Now, who do you seek help from will depend upon the symptoms that we've spoken about.
Right.
If it's something that's just happening recently, it's something that is making you a bit confused because you're not able to identify what outcomes you want to achieve, go to a coach. If you are now beginning to experience intense emotions, and a good sign for that is when people around you start telling you, koi nahi ho jayega. Because at times we don't recognize it, people around us start recognizing and they start telling us this, it's all right, it's all fine, things will be better. So when you have people who are constantly telling you it will all be better, it's basically a sign visit a counseling psychologist.
Right.
If you have reached a place where you are doing certain things, but there are days at a stretch where you feel that you don't feel like doing anything, okay, probably consult a clinical psychologist so that you can assess whether there is a disorder or not.
Right.
And if you feel you've reached that state where you feel I'm just not able to do anything, okay, then the first line of work will be to visit a psychiatrist.
Right. So, with that, I would definitely wrap today's session. But, before we end today's session, I would request you to probably, as a practitioner in the field, of course, we are aware of the different types that are associated with mental health. What is that one line that you would want to say to people, especially the ones who have all of these ideologies created, pagal nahi hu, and it is better that I turn to my friends or family rather than seeking out for help. And of course, there are so many other inhibitions that people have when it comes to approaching a mental health practitioner. So, what is that one line that you would definitely want to tell people?
So one line would be that start understanding that mental health is about mental health and not mental illness. So when you visit a mental health practitioner, you visit a mental health practitioner because you want to be healthier, not because you're ill.
Right.
You go to a yoga practitioner to do yoga. Do you always go to do a yoga because you have a physical issue and you are only trying to use yoga to help you improve your health? The answer is no. There are a lot of people who are very healthy and yet they visit a yoga practitioner, right? Or they go to a gym, right? Why? Because they're trying to maintain and improve what is already good.
Right, right.
The same applies to mental health also. So it's important to what should I say? To create a disconnect between mental health practitioner and mental illness alone.
Right, right.
Right? And that's the whole reason why we came up with the challenge that we spoke about to begin with. That you visit a mental health practitioner not because there's a problem, you can also visit a mental health practitioner because you want to live a happier, healthier, and a more fulfilling life.
Right, right. So, probably just creating normalcy to mental health and the problems related to mental health. So,
Correct. And not just problem, also talking about mental health and mental health practitioners in terms of growth that you will be able to achieve. For example, I get a lot of clients who come and tell me that, Nitin, I am earning X amount of money. I think I have the potential to go to the Y amount, but something is not working out for me. Right? They are not really, it's not that they are unhappy, it's not that they have an illness, it's not that they have a problem, it's just that they are looking at growing further. Right? And we help them grow further. So basically, if any of you want to earn more money and you're not able to earn more money, probably you can still visit a mental health practitioner.
right, 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 right. So, I think with that, we will end today's session. Thank you so much, sir, for all the insights. And I'm pretty sure that it is definitely going to benefit all the viewers and possibly the ones that who will be watching the videos post our session. But if at all there are any questions, I'm definitely going to send it over to you. And it's lovely having you. It was a great chat, and I hope that we connect again soon and we can have another session with you, sir.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me over here. It has been an amazing conversation for me as well. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you and the viewers who have watched it now or later would also enjoy it. I would just end by saying that with the mental health month there, please take care of your mental health. Whether you are a practitioner or not, you still need to take care of your mental health.
Right. That's true. That's true. So thank you so much. Good night, everyone. Thank you, sir. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Take care.